There are two things that I would like you to know before I croak. I'm not planning on croaking, but there are some young wives out there that I've been hanging out with, and one of their young husbands may shoot me. So I want to get this done before the young husband finds out and I get shot. There are a couple of things that it's very interesting when you're 86 years old. You realize that everything is forever. And when I was a little boy, it didn't used to be that way. If you want to hear a great singer, you heard the great singer and that was it. It was done. Nobody recorded anything and that was it. If you were lucky enough to be there, that was fine. The same way with a play, and even the same way with movies. People didn't pay a lot of attention to movies because there was no place to see them. You know, once the movie came out and you saw it in the regular theaters, there was no little dump theater that you went and paid 10 cents for to see some 20-year-old movie. So they kind of disappeared too. They're coming back now. Everything is coming back now. Everything, people show me stuff that I don't even know that I did. They show me movies that I don't know that I was in. They showed me a movie the other day called The Beast of Budapest. And I was a Budapest street rebel during some war. And there's a picture of me with my gun and all that junk. So everything in the world is out there. Everything that Rosie has ever said about me will live forever. If she called me up tomorrow and apologized for everything, I'd say thanks a lot, but it doesn't change anything because it's all out there. Everything is out there, and it'll be there forever. So there's a couple of things that I want to put out there because I want them to be there forever. I told you once that they didn't win the civil trial. I lost it. I was suicidal. I didn't care. Now just hang on to that thought because we're going to reverse now and tell you why I was suicidal and why I lost my will to live. And I never got it back completely because all that stuff is out there. I think I told you somewhere that my daughter, Delina, was my closest and most trusted friend in the world. Noah, my son, and I were not enemies. My wife, Sandra, we weren't enemies. But for some reason or other, Delina and I just hooked up. And we could spend all day together and she would be piggybacking. And when she was littler, she would sit on my foot. And I would walk around with her sitting on my foot because she was a tiny little munchkin. She never did get very big in terms of height and so forth. She was always, but she was my best, most trusted friend. We could go out and spend a day together. We would go to the desert together and spend a day. And I would shoot a cottontail and we would skin it and clean it and barbecue it and like that. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are instantly going to say, how could you possibly shoot a sweet little rabbit? Well, let's put it this way. You go out and buy a chicken, or you buy a rabbit, or you buy a game hen or pigeons or whatever from your local supermarket, and you cook and you eat it. And that animal has had a horrible life of being born in a cage on wire, of not even having any parents because they throw them into a nursery where there are thousands of them. And that animal has a miserable life. And then it gets slaughtered and cleaned and washed up, and you go by it and you eat it. And you don't think about the fact that that animal never had a life of any kind. It never got to have sex. It never got to do anything. It never even got to play with another animal. And you cook it and you eat it and you feel fine. And you should. You shouldn't be miserable because the rabbit was miserable. But my rabbit lived in a hole in the ground, had a mother and a father, got to play when he was a baby, got to nurse from his mother, had a wonderful time, got to have sex 100 times. As you know, rabbits are very busy sexually, and had a wonderful life, got to play at night because cottontails come out at night and they play in the moonlight. So the animal had a great life. And then I do the same thing that you did. I eat the animal. And I learned a long time ago, you thank God for your life, you thank God for the rabbit's life, and you thank God for the meal that you're going to eat. And then you sit there in the moonlight and you eat the rabbit. And it's kind of a spiritual thing. You certainly don't have to. You got enough money in your pocket to go buy a miserable rabbit, but you choose to go out and buy a miserable pheasant that didn't have any life. I choose to go out. I don't buy fish. I don't shoot 15 pheasants. I don't shoot anything anymore. But I would go out and I would shoot one pheasant. I wrote a book called Tales of a Rascal, and I told a story in there about how my great-grandfather and I went hunting and so forth. You don't have to go buy the book. I'm not trying to sell anything. But there is a spiritual right way to kill an animal and eat it. And if you can't kill it, then shame on you. You go buy a rabbit that somebody else killed. So anyway, Delina and I were the best of friends. I would trust her with my life. I would trust her with my life. I believe that if somebody had a gun on me and they were going to kill me, that my sweet little daughter, Delina Raya Blake, would tackle him and try to get that gun away from him. I believe that with all my heart. In my prayers, I used to thank God specially for Delina. And I would put her on my back and we would go out and bicycle all day long with her sitting on my back. Or I'd put her on the back of Watha, my horse, and we'd go out and spend a day together. So we were the greatest of friends. When I was arrested and did a year of solitary confinement, Delina used to come and visit me very, very often. And she was allowed to come on any day that she wanted because my lawyer put her on salary. So now she didn't have to wait till Visitor's Day. This is stuff that you should know about anyway, in case any member of your family winds up in jail. You don't have to wait to Visitor's Day. If you go on salary by the lawyer, even if he pays you $100 a week, $50 a week, you're still on salary to him, and that means you can see your client whenever you want. So Delina technically was not my daughter. She was my representative, and I was her client. So I got arrested. And at that time, I was living out there in Hidden Hills, which is about 15 to 20 miles outside of Los Angeles, in a nice country home. And Delina was living there too, and so was Rosie. So now I get arrested, and she becomes my lawyer because she's getting $100 a week from my lawyer, and that means she can come and see me anytime. So every time she came, she had something for me to sign. And I didn't know whether it was from my lawyer or if God sent a messenger down here to give her papers for me to sign. All I know is that I trusted Delina with my life. And we talked, and I said, there's a good chance that I'm going to die in here. And that's no big deal. I've had a good enough life, but I'm getting sick. I'm getting sick of being in this cement box. They called it some kind of security or something or other because I was some kind of half-assed celebrity, but it's the same box they put you in when you're in solitary confinement. There are no bars, there are no windows, there's just cement, and even the front where the door is cement, and the door is made out of steel. There are no bars. You can't look out, you can't say hello to anybody, you can't wave. There's a window about this big in the middle of the door, and that's what you have. That's your contact with the world, looking out that window. And there was a red line around the door that nobody could step over that red line, so nobody could even come close enough to talk to me. And I said, Deli, I'm worried because I want to make sure that we get this thing legally right. So I want you to legally adopt Rosie right now. I don't want to wait to see if I'm going to make it or not make it. You're going to adopt Rosie. You're going to be her mother for the rest of her life, and I'm going to be her father. Even if I wind up 6 feet under the ground, I'm going to be her father. And Delina said, don't worry, I'll take care of everything. I will take care of everything. Now, just like I told you when I started talking about Rosie and all the terrible things she said about me on her publicity junket, there's no way for me to do this without feeling a little bit bad. And I don't want you to feel bad for me, and I don't want you to feel bad with me. Just allow me to feel bad about this. Because, like I said, Delina from the time she was born was my pal, my best friend. I saw her through grammar school. I saw her through high school. When she wanted to take her tests, I would always drive her to places where the tests were. And sometimes I'd even sneak into school and look at the window and wave at her when she was taking her SATs and all that kind of stuff to get in college and all that. So she would give me a paper and I would sign it. She'd come back a couple of days later with some more papers and I would sign them. And what those papers were, And this I swear to whatever God, to whatever spirit you believe in the whole world, that I believed that I was signing what I told her I wanted. I wanted her to be Rosie's mother, no matter whether I lived or died, Rosie's mother, and that I would be Rosie's father. And if I got out, I'd be Rosie's father for the rest of my life. And if Delina was lucky enough to find the man of her dreams, she would marry him, and Rosie could even live with them. But I would be her father, and Rosie would know that I was her father. Because before I went to jail, I was Rosie's father. We played together. We went to the ocean together. She loved the ocean. Rosie loved the ocean. So she was like, what, 2 years old. She couldn't even talk complicated words. She'd say, Oshie, Oshie, Oshie. Every time we got near the car, she'd point to the car and say, Oshie, Oshie. That meant we had to go to the ocean. And when we got to the ocean, I had to run after her because she would run in the ocean. She loved the ocean. And there were times I put her on my shoulders, and she loved that because we would go out further. Then pretty soon, the waves started breaking, so I would back up. She said, no, 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 no. We'd stay out there, and the waves would come over both of us. And I'd say, God, I hope she's breathing right. She knew instinctively how to hold her breath till the wave came over us, and she laughed and enjoyed it, so I was her father. We would go for long walks in the country. I took her for a ride on a motorcycle when she was 2 years old. I had her around horses, all that stuff. I was her father. She had no other father in the world. She had no other father to think about. She had no other father. She enjoyed learning how to talk. And she'd laugh when she couldn't talk. And she'd laugh because when I got to potty, I said, now listen, when you have to pee, don't use the diapers anymore. Just tell me and we will go to the potty. Okay, got it? And she smiled. She was just fun and games. And every 20 minutes, she would let me know she had to go to the potty. And we would go to the potty. I'd take her diapers off and she'd sit there and smile. Like, I fooled you, I don't have to pee. But I would take her to the potty. That was a game we played. That was one of the many, many games that we played. We played hide and go seek. We played at the ocean. We played out in the country. And at night we would go out, because in Hidden Hills at night there were coyotes and there were brush rabbits and there were cottontails. And we would have a flashlight. I still have that flashlight, where we would look at the rabbits and we would look at the coyotes. And every time we saw a coyote go near a rabbit, we'd yell and the rabbit would run. Okay. So she gives me all the papers to sign. Now I'm through signing the papers, and what I had really signed is Delina was Rosie's mother, and Gregory Horowitz, Delina's husband or future husband or whatever he was going to be, was her father. And I was out. And she even made me sign a piece of paper. I don't know, most of you probably don't know this, but it's true, that during adoptions, whether you're adopting from an orphanage, whether you're adopting from a pregnant woman who doesn't want to keep the baby and wants it to have a good home, and you're adopting the baby, the parent of the baby has 2 years to change their mind. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But she made me sign a waiver giving up to 2 years because she knew that as soon as I found out that Greg Horowitz was Rosie's father and I wasn't, I would either go up there and punch his head until it broke open, or I would negate the whole thing and say, I have a 2-year right, you're out. You're married to Delina, and that's great. But if you ever one time tell Rosie that you're her father, you'll learn how to fly or you'll land on the ground because I'm going to throw you out of a high window. And you better practice flying right now. But I didn't know any of that. I had signed away my rights to change my mind. And I didn't find out any of that until I got out of solitary confinement and until we were approaching the pretrial motions. There's several things that you go through that are unimportant to you. They're unimportant to anybody unless that somebody happens to be in trouble with the cops. But there are pretrial motions. There are a lot of things that you go through. I didn't find out what my daughter, Delina Raya Blake, I didn't find out what she did to me until after the criminal trial. All that time, she pretended that I was Rosie's father. And Horowitz, her husband, pretended that I was Rosie's father. And nobody else knew. My lawyers didn't know anything about that. That was a civil matter, and they were criminal trials. And I'm sure that if they did know, they probably wouldn't tell me, because they wouldn't want me to cut my throat or cut Greg's throat before the trial was over. So, needless to say, God was on my side every day and every night. And in my prayers, I would ask him what to do. And I went through several lawyers, which I should have, because they weren't the right lawyers. Jerry Schwartzbach was the right lawyer, because Tom Mazzaro and the lawyer before him, Arlen Braun, they were all criminal lawyers. And they were famous for getting guilty people off. Tom Mazzaro is a perfect example of that with Michael Jackson. But when you're innocent, you don't want a lawyer who's famous for getting people off. Now remember, that whole OJ thing had just gone on. And whether the whole country thought he was guilty or innocent didn't make any difference, because when he got off, 90% of the country was just thrilled. We were all watching television when the colleges all started jumping up and down and laughing and being happy and crazy. Now, it's true, the black community was more happy, and I shouldn't say the whole community. I'm sure there were people out there that felt differently, but they weren't on television. All we saw on television were people that were happy that O.J. Simpson got off. And they all knew there was a mountain of evidence there that made the Himalayas look like gopher holes. But he was free. Now here comes Robert Blake, another celebrity. Is he guilty? And he's going to get off? No chance. We're taking him to the cleaners. But the evidence was obvious and proved otherwise. The police themselves proved that not only that I didn't do it, but that it was physically impossible for me to do it. With the stuff powder from gunshot residue, from all kinds of things. They proved, when they found the gun, they proved that I couldn't have fired the gun because I'm left-handed. And even if I fired right-hand, the bullets would come out the other way and burn me on the cheek. Anyway, that's not important. What's important is I won the criminal trial because I should have. And anybody out there who wants to go find the 20/20 that we did showed, and everybody said he was innocent. It was the only time that any news media really admitted that they were wrong. And so the 20/20 was just a wonderful, wonderful thing for me. They had police saying the cops took him to the cleaners. Thomas Noguchi, what his name was, they took him to the cleaners. They all were going to get book deals, and they were all going to live happily ever after. And they also figured that I was going to die in that cement box. And they figured right, because I would have. They said, look, he's an old man. He's never been to jail, never been any place. He ain't going to survive in there. And dead people are always guilty. Even in the old cowboy movies, bang, bang, he drew first. He's dead. I say he drew first. What are you going to do about it? So dead people are always guilty. Well, I made it. And the first night, at the end of the trial, I walked outside, and if you want to, you can look up the last day of the trial when I was acquitted and I went outside, and there were news media from all over the planet. I mean, there were a couple of hundred people there with trucks and all that stuff, and I gave a very long interview, and then I went home, and Jerry Schwartzbach was there with his wife, my lawyer, and several other people, and Delina and Greg Horowitz showed up. And I said, where's Rosie? They said, well, it's late, and she's tired, so we left her with the au pair. I said, what the hell is an au pair? Well, an au pair, it's a French word meaning maid or housekeeper or whatever. Anyway, the point is Rosie wasn't there. I saw her the next day. I saw her a couple of times after that. I went up to the house, and they, because Rosie was living up there with them in the house that I bought for Delina. You've already seen that episode where I gave Noah a house, I gave Delina a house, and all that money that I gave him, because I figured, well, if I croak, you don't need a will, because you're going to get all the stuff before I die. And then they started telling me when I could come up there and when I couldn't come up there. And things got stranger and stranger. And I said, bring Rosie down, because we have a game that we play with the flashlight. We go in the closet and we turn the flashlight on and off, and we put our finger on it, and you can see your veins and arteries. Rosie was just the sweetest, most adventurous girl. She didn't have, what's that line from that great movie? She had the heart of a lion. She wasn't afraid of anything. She loved the dark, as long as I was there. I still have the flashlight. And they finally told me the truth. It was after Lena had her baby, Natalie. Funny thing, in my family, I wound up naming all the kids, nieces, nephews, stuff. I'm good with names. Anyway, after Natalie came into the world, they started telling me when I could come up there and when I can't come up there. I said, you can't tell me when to come up here. I said, and one day Rosie and I were going to go out on an adventure, because we were very, very, very big on adventures. Rosie and I would go for walks up in the hills. I told you we'd go out at night and watch the bunnies and all those things. And Rosie said, I can't go. I said, what do you mean I can't go? She said, I walked over to the front door and I opened the front door and Rosie ran back to where the au pair was. And I said, come on, sweetheart, we're going on an adventure. We go on great adventures. She said, I can't go. And they told me that she wasn't my daughter. And Rosie was standing there when they told me. She was 3 or 4 years old. She was going to preschool. And it was a Jewish preschool. And that was the thing we had an argument about. I said, why are you picking her religion? I told you what I was going to do as her father. I was going to wait till she got old enough and let her pick her own religion. I mean, there's nothing wrong with if you are a really Orthodox Jewish or Catholic or whatever, saying, this is a Catholic child, she's going to go to Catholic school, zama. That wasn't the way it was with Rosie. I was Italian, but I wasn't much of an Italian. I went to First Holy Communion and I did that stuff. I tried to be an altar boy and I failed at it. I didn't know how to ding, ding, ding. I couldn't do that stuff right. But they told me, and I left, and I decided that I would play it their way. I would just come up there and see her when I could. But I couldn't do it because Rosie and I were never alone. It was a 2-story house, big fancy house. Spent a lot of money on that house. Greg would be on the 2nd floor, looking out the window in the backyard, watching me and Rosie play. So we were never alone. And I got to the point, because I wasn't crazy, but I wasn't too sane after the criminal trial and after being in that cement box. So I couldn't hold up well anymore under any more pressure. Now is coming the civil trial. The Bakley family sued me for killing Bonnie, even though I had been found not guilty in the criminal trial. But by then, I didn't care, because I had a gun in my mouth. I didn't care about life. I was an old man, and the devil had come and taken the two most precious things in my life. My dearest, dearest friend, Delina, whom I trusted with my life, and my baby, Rosie. And it just happened that Delina, whom I trusted most, at least if a stranger had pulled that Rosie trick, I would have had Delina to console me. But Delina was gone. And as it turns out, she never was. And Rosie was gone. So I went into the civil trial, and I didn't care. I tried to kill myself once. I just didn't care. I took the stand. I said all kinds of crazy, stupid, terrible things. I alienated the jury. It was a good jury. It was a good jury. They would have found me innocent, I'm sure, but not with the things that I said and the things that I'd done. I mean, I took the stand, and I was crazy. I was quoting Shakespeare. "'Tis now the very witching hour of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes damnation on this earth. Now could I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look upon." Now, somebody who's trying to get the jury on their side wouldn't do anything like that. I did worse things than that. I can't remember that, I know a lot of dark quotations. Well, I studied Shakespeare. And I just, he would ask me a question and I wouldn't even answer the question. I'd say something stupid and crazy that just came out of nowhere. We are all lost children, alone and crying in the night, afraid of the dark, but terrified of the light. Now, can you imagine somebody answering a question on the stand by quoting the darkest, most awful things? Well, anyway, the jury didn't have much choice but to find me guilty. And they awarded Bonnie's family, I think it was $30 million. I didn't give a damn. If I was in my right mind, I was broke at the end of the criminal trial. I didn't care. There was always a camera that I can get in front of and make money just like that. All my life, acting was always my source of money. And winning that trial, I could have got some of the greatest parts in the world. I could have taken parts away from Jesus because I was the most popular person in America, in the world. When I won the criminal trial, all those people out there from London, from Germany, from every place, they all said the right thing happened. The cops were trying to nail him, and they got nailed themselves. They all lost their book deals. But I didn't care. I didn't care if I lived, and I didn't care if I died. And I was taking Valium and Xanax, and I was drinking again, and I just didn't care, so I lost the civil trial. and I didn't care if I lost it. And what I should have done, as soon as I won the criminal trial, and Tom Mazzaro did a lot of very good things for me. And one of them was, he said, you should declare bankruptcy right now. You don't have any money. Declare bankruptcy. Don't declare an 11, which is a regrouping. Declare it 7. Bankruptcy. Let them take, what have you got? You got 120 grand, you got 150 grand. Let them take it and divide it up among themselves. And you declare bankruptcy. And it's over. They can't sue you now. You've declared bankruptcy. They got all the money that you had. That's what I should have done. Instead of quoting Churchyard's yawn, and hell itself breathes damnation on this earth. I think I even did, yes I did. I did a piece of Hamlet about his mother sleeping with his uncle. I can't remember all those. Anyway, so there's the 2 stories. One of them is how I lost Rosie forever. And the other one is how I never really had Delina in the first place. And I'm here. I'm still alive. But think of how different it would have been when I won that criminal trial. I could have gone to work the next day in England in any lead that I wanted to. And I could have taken my baby with me because she was my baby and I could take her any place I wanted to in the world. But she wasn't my baby. She never was my baby. They kidnapped her. They legally kidnapped her. And just a while back, I got a phone call from my once son-in-law, Greg, and he said, I want to thank you because you did a great job in raising Delina. She's a wonderful person with wonderful qualities, and I want to thank you for birthing my daughter, Rosie, and I hope you have a wonderful life. And it took me a long time to answer. And I said, you shouldn't be thanking me for that. You should be thanking me for not killing you. Because I'd have gone up to that house and thrown you out of a window because you stole my baby. And you ended my life for me. Because my life is not worth a damn. I'm still alive because God wants me alive. And maybe talking to the people out there is going to bring me back a little bit. But I hung the phone up and I just let it go. Now that's the last dark stuff you're going to hear from me for a long time. Unless you send in questions. You send in some very good questions. I haven't been answering too many of them because we're busy flopping this thing together. It's going to be about 25 episodes long by the time, if somebody don't throw me out of a window. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We haven't even gotten to alfalfa. I can do 3 or 4 hours on just alfalfa. And I hope I'll live to do it. And I'm glad I got this out of my system. And I hope that Karen will put it together as soon as she can and put it out there. Because there's a lot of ugly stuff out there about me now. Mainly coming from Rosie. but I'm sure she's being coached by her managers and her agents and her publicists and all the rest of that stuff. But for now, God bless you for watching this stuff. And God bless you for the lovely things that you take the time out of your life, total strangers, and you take the time out of your life to tell me how much you enjoyed Baretta when it was on, and how much you love the Little Rascals, and that you grew up watching Little Rascals on television, that you didn't even know that they were made in the movies and stuff like that, and how many of you are still fans, and how many of you thank me for In Cold Blood and this and that, and what I did, that I made a contribution to your life, and that you thank me for being on a Johnny Carson show 130 times, and people have, said I didn't run away from home because I watched you on the Johnny Carson show, and you told me it's worse out there than it is in here. Try to make it work with your parents and all that stuff. And I really, really appreciate it. It makes me know that I lived a worthwhile life, even though it may not have wound up to a worthwhile, that I did live a worthwhile life. And some of you even read my book and tell me about chapters in the book and stuff like that. And God bless you. Whatever God you believe in, I hope He blesses you. And I hope I hang around long enough to tell you everything that I got to tell you. Until then, let the good times roll.